Hello there, kia ora. The following piece is actually an audio version of a newsletter that I've written on my Substack at some point in time recently, looking at issues related to local body governance and this year's local body elections. We're doing an audio version of it because some people can't access written word for a number of reasons, and audio is something easier for them to be able to ingest. It's a simple process designed to try and get more people informed with this year's local body elections to make sure more people get out there and have their say. But it does mean that because some of this content might be a couple of months old, that some of the data contained therein is out of date. Just a bit of a warning. If you want to read the original, you can find it all on my Substack, which you can subscribe to through the LinkedIn link that is available on this page somewhere. I don't even know where off the top of my head, but it's easy enough to access in the description below. This post was originally published on May 2nd, 2025. It's entitled, Looking for Local Government Red Flags, How to Research Candidates for the Upcoming Local Body Elections. After last week's content pieces around Groundswell's plans to support candidates in the local body elections without outright admitting the links those candidates have to the organisation, much like Voices for Freedom did in 2022, I've had a lot of people messaging me asking, how do you spot these candidates? So I figured I'd put this together with a bit of a spotter's guide as a resource for people to help them make informed decisions about their votes. Now, I firmly believe that everyone has the right to vote for whomever they please, but it's unfair to withhold information from voters that could impact their decision on what those candidates actually stand for, believe in, and want to achieve. Which means it's also important to note that not every red flag to me is a red flag to others. There are some potential candidates, after all, out there who are an open book about their beliefs, like Southland's Jaspreet Boparai or Teviot Valley's Gil Booth. I would never vote for anyone so clearly down the disinformation rabbit hole whose association with an organisation like Voices for Freedom or Reality Check Radio is a clear red flag to me personally. But to their credit, they are open and honest about those beliefs, and voters in those areas can make their choices with that information easily available if they do a quick Google. But that does lead to the first issue for people doing quick Googles, and that's media coverage. In some parts of the country, there are media creators, particularly in the South Island, who platform and mainstream the views of these groups and frame them to minimise these connections. A newspaper story is a great source of information, but multiple perspectives on a story is a much better way to get a clearer picture where it's possible. But with so many regional news outlets closing or downsizing, that's not always possible. For me, the biggest red flag is a social media scrub. Some people have personal social media pages that aren't public. I do that myself. And there's a variety of reasons that people do that. But evidence of a social media scrub before an election is a red flag. It shows the candidates know some of their views are less likely to be appealing to voters. Let's take Matamata Piako's Caleb Ansell, for example. There's actually an image here that's a screen grab of his comment to last week's newsletter saying, "You talk a lot of nonsense." Now, Caleb is a former candidate for both the New Conservatives and New Zealand First, which are red flags in themselves. He's an extreme conservative Christian and created content where he chastises the Prime Minister for wishing Muslims a, quote, Eid Mubarak and Happy Ramadan, because he believes, despite the fact religion is not explicitly mentioned in our founding document, this country is a Christian one. And he's made at least 4 TikToks recently about Green MP Benjamin Doyle using attack lines from the far right based on selective content and insinuated meanings. In the lead up to the 2023 general election, he was mentioned in a story by Stuff reporters on the digital trails of New Zealand First candidates, where their forensic analysis of his deleted content included QAnon catchphrases and calls to defrock the Bishop of Canterbury for not supporting anti-gay churches in Uganda. In an interview with the local radio station, he claimed hundreds of thousands of immigrants are moving here to take low-wage jobs from real New Zealanders. This is known as the Great Replacement theory, and that the Green Party policies were actually lifted straight out of the Communist Manifesto. Those missing footprints, though, don't vanish forever. Sometimes you can see what's been removed on Google or the Wayback Machine, and these days, knowing the right prompts on a generative AI can help find details. For example, I used a prompt on ChatGPT, which was, what controversial opinions has Caleb Ansell from Matamata Piako expressed publicly? And the results I got were actually pretty broad. It says Caleb Ansell, a New Zealand First candidate for the Coromandel electorate in the 2023 general election, has attracted attention due to several controversial views and affiliations. There's the alleged QAnon affiliation. Reports have indicated that Ansell has shared content associated with QAnon conspiracy theories. QAnon is a far-right conspiracy theory alleging a secret plot against former US President Donald Trump and his supporters by a supposed deep state. Such affiliations have raised concerns about the influence of conspiracy theories within New Zealand's political landscape, and that came from The Standard. There's his stance on LGBTQ plus issues. Ansell has reportedly called for the defrocking of the Archbishop of Canterbury due to the Archbishop's opposition to Uganda's Anti-Homosexuality Act, a law that has been widely condemned for its severe penalties against LGBTQ plus individuals. This position aligns with extreme anti-LGBTQ plus sentiments and has been criticised by human rights advocates. And then there's his previous political affiliations. Before joining New Zealand First, Ansell stood as a candidate for the New Conservative Party in the 2020 election. The New Conservative Party is known for its socially conservative policies, and Ansell's shift to New Zealand First has been viewed by some as part of the party's broader strategy to attract voters with similar ideological leanings. These aspects of Ansell's political profile have sparked debate and concern amongst various groups and observers regarding the presence and acceptance of such views within mainstream politics. That was ChatGPT. In fact, a tool like ChatGPT can be really useful by seeing what it is that you can't find or search for when it comes to info on your local candidates. Take someone like Selwyn councillor Elizabeth Munt. She was identified by Stuff as having links to Voices for Freedom at the last local elections, and more recently links with New Zealand First and the funder behind Inflection Point NZ. That anti-trans circle jerk where the organiser was the one outed as spreading anti-queer disinformation against Benjamin Doyle. A few weeks back, I did an interview actually with Selwyn Mayor Sam Broughton, and as is often the case with these interviews, we had to let them know in advance what we wanted to discuss, and Munt was taken off the table really quickly. And I get it, he's got to still work with her, and if you focus on one councillor, it takes away from the whole work that everybody on council does, and he's got to control sort of public perceptions as to what council actually does. But ChatGPT's responses were really kind of interesting. Councillor Munt has voiced scepticism regarding prevailing climate change models. In a July 2024 interview, she discussed her concerns about extreme climate modelling and the influence of vested interests, suggesting that such models threaten communities' well-being. She emphasised the need to protect property owners from policies based on these models. In early 2025, during deliberations on whether the Selwyn District Council should submit feedback on the Treaty Principles Bill, Councillor Munt voted against making a submission. She, along with another councillor, argued that the council was adopting a political stance which deviated from its traditionally apolitical position. In April 2025, Selwyn District Council voted to create a new council-controlled organisation for managing drinking water and wastewater services. Councillor Munt opposed this decision, citing concerns over increased costs and the potential neglect of community opinions. She highlighted that a significant majority of public submissions favoured keeping water services under direct council control. And in May 2023, Councillor Munt participated in a discussion expressing concerns about the content of sex education in schools. She questioned the appropriateness of certain materials being taught to children, suggesting that some content might not align with community values. It's important to note that these views were her personal opinions and not official positions of the Selwyn District Council. And there's some really interesting stuff in that ChatGPT result. Now, for me, one of the other red flags is linked to the groups that get downplayed. Let's take Whangarei Mayor Vince Kokoralo, for example. In the lead up to the 2022 election, it was revealed that he had purchased the domain of a local Northland AstroTurf group with links to Hobson's Pledge, NZCPR, and, the local Voices for Freedom chapter. He claimed that this was simply part of his role helping with IT. But within days of the election, Voices for Freedom had actually sent all elected members letters claiming that they were responsible for them being elected, which he refused to publicly acknowledge if he had received it or not. And because it wasn't sent to his council email, it can't actually be subpoenaed under an OIA or a Legoima, which is a local government OIA. But he has appeared on far-right media platforms known for spreading disinformation and conspiracies, both Reality Check Radio and Counterspin Media. He's taken up the Voices for Freedom talking points on water fluoridation and was the guest speaker for them at a local election event in March and was endorsed by Voices for Freedom at the last local elections. But he still maintains he is not linked to them and doesn't share their views. And we've got an article here that was actually written on the 1st of October 2022 where it says Northland mayoral candidate Vince Coccarello says he has no political links to group endorsing him. I think I got quoted in that article. Anyway, now this is where things are going to get tricky for voters, okay? They need to decide if those many alluded connections are enough of a red flag for them, or if they want to take the mayor at his word, which is why getting out and meeting candidates is a really important step to take. So they can ask candidates questions directly, or you can ask them directly. And this leads to a chance to see some other shorthand lines which are red flags that candidates used in the last election. Coded catchphrases and lines used to deflect and misdirect and show up in both written form on candidate statements and in-person events. At the 2022 local election, they included, I believe in common sense decision making. I believe in local control. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I don't judge, which is coded language for I don't agree with decisions others made that the outcomes weren't ones I liked, like how many people chose to get vaccinated against COVID and didn't all die. Or Three Waters is bad because Maori and co-governance are evil. I saw a video on Facebook saying that there was graphene in the vaccine and shedding was happening, so I questioned science with my fourth form science experience. And I don't judge, but everyone who got a vaccine is a tyrant, everyone who agreed to the pandemic mitigation factors is a monster, and anyone who points out I'm wrong is evil, brainwashed, and probably woke. So, we had a look here at Sally Whitaker. She ran for the Te Awa Mutu Kehi local board in Waipa. And we had a look at her statement from policy.nz. It says here, why am I standing? I am passionate about small-town New Zealand and what this means to our way of life. I am disillusioned with central government overreach into local matters. I wish to promote locals, for locals, by locals, and advocate for all in both Te Awa Mutu and Kehi. And then in the About Me section, she goes, I have lived in the Waipa for 30 years, raising my 4 adult children. I am honest, passionate, and enthusiastic with a common sense practical approach, available, non-judgmental, and here for all residents. We all matter. So Sally Whitaker is a great example of those catchphrases and coded language. She's one of a couple of conspiracy-fueled members of the community board in Waipa's Te Awa Mutu Kehi Community Board, and this was her response, as I said, to the Policy NZ project. And their project is to create an easy-to-access database of candidates and elections where voters can compare notes. It's benign and simple, right? Well, if you take a look at her actual Facebook page, it includes content from NZDSOS, calling Jacinda a tyrant several times a day, stunning bad news for flu shots. I wish people would have questioned Fauci as much as they're questioning Elon, a celebration of bathroom bills put forward by New Zealand First. And you're telling me that due to allergies, a chef must know the ingredients of a cupcake, but a doctor doesn't need to know the ingredients of the vaccine? Interesting. There's also a whole bunch of pro-fluoridation stuff in here as well, or pro-anti-fluoridation, if that makes sense. She's against fluoridation. She hates fluoride. It's a really strange thing. In fact, the big quote in the middle of this picture that I got here is, to all people mocking others who actually take their time to learn what is really going on instead of just believing everything they are told to think. You should be embarrassed and ashamed that you don't look into anything and that you have absolutely zero clue of what is actually going on when all the facts are right in front of you. Now, it's actually been, at the time of writing, more than 2 weeks since she posted anything on her socials related to her local community that she's so passionate about. But there's daily updates on every conspiracy that you can imagine. She claims she's disillusioned with central government overreach, but supports Tanya Unkovich and New Zealand First's measures to define gender and to police toilets. She hasn't promoted anything local beyond the Bridge Club, and she says she's honest, but doesn't mention her children have cut ties with her, or that she and local anti-fluoride campaigner Kane Titchener have both removed illegal images of a child covered by automatic name suppression laws from the Baby W case that they had on their profiles, and that she's non-judgmental. Yeah, that last post certainly seemed very, very judgy. But if you base your vote on the blurb you get written by candidates, then you can easily miss all of this. Even a quick Google, resources like policy.nz crop up near the top of the results page. And they are great resources and brilliant in their intent, but still based on what candidates themselves want to present to the public. So sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, which most people simply won't have the time to do. And turnout indicators show fewer and fewer people are even taking the time to vote. So keep an eye out for red flags. Learn the tricks of how candidates may try and change the narrative, hide their past actions or misdirect. And don't be afraid to look at tools like how to engineer better prompts into generative AI or follow content creators who are doing their level best to keep people informed and engaged, like It's in the Ballot. Everyone has the right to vote for whoever they want to, but candidates that misdirect, who hide their actual beliefs or links to groups trying to use vast resources to impact outcomes is not only disingenuous, it's bad for democracy. This year's local body election is on Saturday, October the 11th, and it's done by postal ballot, which is a long, drawn-out process that, a lot of people don't finish up doing. But it means that Elections NZ is asking to make sure that your details are up to date at the moment, and if you haven't received a letter from them, check out the elections.nz website for more information on how to update that data. Also, make sure you do the research into the candidates so that you can understand who's running and what it is that they stand for, and your vote can go to make sure that you have a really representative council there who represents the views of a number of communities.